So I thought I'd do one of these awful videos, of man in the car, white man in the car, middle-aged white man in the car, because, that's what the kids like. But it's, what I want to talk about is what's happening in America. I mean, for a long time, I've been saying to anyone who listens, especially my family, you can ask them, it's been driving them crazy, is that, America is in big trouble. Because if we were a historian, we've entered what, historians have called before, like the cool zone. That is, when you're in school, when you're learning about history, you learn, you get the boring, well, in England, you get the boring stuff, the Tudors, blah, 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 Victorians, and then, post, the Great Depression, First World War, Second World War, the cool zone, shit's happening all the time. That's when it starts in the 60s, the hippies and stuff. We're in another cool zone. And what's happening in America now is, if you look, you've got to sort of, if you're a historian, like describing and say there was some collapse in America, I don't think it would be hard explained. I always use the example, if you think back to, like, when I think back to when I was at school, which was unfortunately a long time ago, but you would have, when you did the Second World War, when you did the Nazis, there was always the question, how did this happen? How did the Germans become, these racist people? How did they, become these sort of, these monsters that they appear to be in the Nazis? How were the Nazis allowed to sort of, did they brainwash the Germans? What was the context? How does, this is crazy. How did it happen? It seems so far-fetched. But now, I think many kids at school, if you were like, well, how do you think it happened? I don't think they'd be like, oh gosh, I don't know. I think they would, look around and say, oh, well, yeah, well, we know how it happened, because it's, the context is here again, the hatred, the economic collapse, the despots rising up, the sort of believing crazy stories, crazy narratives. This is happening all the time now. We are in this world now, and so that's the situation now you have in America. So you have a crazy president, as a Cheeto in the White House. We got Trump is clearly just mainly a narcissistic sort of, just really wants power, and just, obviously didn't get enough attention as a kid, wants that constant confirmation. He's the big boy. He got, he big man on campus. Everyone loves him. He's top, you can tell him, he's a giant baby the way he stands. He's a freak, but, he wants that. You've got an economy that's, had a collapse. The 2008 crash is massively financialized. That is, hugely privatized, which in itself is an interesting thing, because when you learn about fascism, you learn about the ideology, the sort of the hatred of others, blaming a certain group, the sense of nationhood and nationalism. But what you don't hear about fascism is, in both with Mussolini and with Adolf Hitler, is the economic program that it came with. They smashed unions. They privatized anything that was already nationalized. They did all these, they financialized what they could. They gave to big business all the time, tax breaks, they got rid of workers' rights. They did all these things that have happened again, but it's not taught because we're doing it now, and so it can't be taught. But really, when we're saying this, it's one of the steps to fascism, so you can't just, take it out, but it's completely ignored because we're doing it all over again. So we have this financialization, this mass privatization, this, the smashing of unions, the sort of the hatred of labor power, the hatred of the left, and again, fascism is defined by its hatred of the left. The left is, once again, we have seen, in the two attempts for the left to sort of make a statement that the Bernie Sanders and Corbyn, the left has been made impossible. It is, it is not an option, because for fascism to function, for it to achieve power, the centrist, the establishment state, has to concede, has to, and they do that in the sense of, oh, he's bad, but oh, he's not a loony lefty, so, at least he's sort of pro-business, and so he will sort of follow certain norms that they seem to think comes with business. But business, i.e. capitalism, is less concerned with norms than it is with profits. And if it can make profit without norms, if it has to, it will. It's not, capitalism does not lead to democracy, to freedom. We've seen this, we introduced capitalism was reintroduced to China, 30, 40 years ago. It's not more democratic. Saudi Arabia isn't democratic. Lots of countries that are capitalist are not democratic. So it's a lie. And so you have this. And then you have the racial tensions in America. They're just clear, persistent racism that, is not defeated in the symbolic electing of a president. There's just that, black people in powers, people of color in powers, does not lead to emancipation. Just like Margaret Thatcher wasn't, a paragon of feminism. It's a classic identity politics trumping everything else. Then you have the militarization of the police. All these tactics that were developed overseas, in the Iraq, in Vietnam, in all these places, have been brought back, and so now they are wearing the equipment that was worn by soldiers in the thing. Although now they have to make it, plus size because they're big fatties, and they are out there, and they've been killing black people. And then you have COVID comes along, locks everyone indoors, and in America, you don't have a healthcare system. Well, you have one, but it's only accessible to those with money, or a good job. And when everyone has to lock down and lose their jobs, then they don't have their healthcare, and then you have no unemployment system, or rather, you have an unemployment system that is instantly suspicious and whose whole role is to get you off that unemployment roll and to get you off any unemployment benefits. And so when you have to be unemployed, even if it's just temporary, like for a lockdown, for a COVID, then it just cannot deal with it, because it's not designed to just say, right, here, you take this, boom, and and then as soon as you can get back to work, when you go back to work, it can't do that. It has to be pushing you off all the time. So you have 40 million people unemployed, boom, in over a 3-month period. It's catastrophic. And this is all happening. And so what happens now, and what I've been saying, and what I think is that what will sort of spark it, when you saw all those right-wingers marching in the state capital of Chicago, and wherever, in Michigan, in all these, states, mainly Democratic states, because it was convenient for the Republicans to put that pressure. But you had them marching with the guns, the white guys, with the Punisher t-shirts and the guns and the QAnon stuff, and, wanting to get their hair did and stuff, and they're screaming in the cop's face, and, people are like, that kind of violence will not lead to will not have the Tinder effect of Tinder, as in like, kindling will not spark an explosion. Because even if they say one of them started shooting or something, because it would be dismissed as sort of crazy, it would instantly sort of be by enough people, and it would be condemned by the right as well, that it's not actually, it's an exception. And we see that even, when they do start shooting, say when they go into a gay, bar, a nightclub, and shoot up the bar, or when they go into a black church and shoot up the church, it won't spark a movement, because, now this is the key for me, unlike if a with the guy who was killed, by the person the copper kneeling on his neck, what happens there? Imagine if someone came up, and in a way we have a version of this with the riots, the cop is doing that, he's killing this person by pressing his knee into this windpipe. The man stopped begging for his life because he's unconscious now, and someone comes up and shoots his cop in the head. That kind of violence, I think, is sort of, is the violence that sparks stuff because it's ambiguous. because no, you don't want a cop to have his head blown off, but that cop was killing someone. And when the violence has to come from the left, because it will have sort of a sense of justice in it, and it will be ambiguous. It won't be right, it won't be correct, it won't be the right thing to do, but it won't be 100% wrong. It will make people, and so some, or there'll be some landlord, that'll be kicking everyone out, and someone will, punch him in the face, or a billionaire that's just ruined the whole town, pumping toxic stuff in, fumes into the water and poison baby, and then someone kills him. That kind of event. And I think this has happened with the police officer. I think these riots, and what has made them viral, is because they have that ambiguity in them. Clearly they are, rampant and indiscriminate and, not completely allied with justice, are just pure anger in many parts, are just, theft, criminality. But wrapped into that is everyone saw the video. Everyone saw that copper kneeling his knee into the neck. And so what do we do? That event, like, is it Jim Brown, I think, who killed, who sparked the Civil War in America with, an act of terrorism, but attacking slaveholders, or even Franz Ferdinand getting shot in the beginning of the First World War by an anarchist. It's always on the left because the violence is ambiguous. And Jean Baudrillard has this whole theory that we're in a sort of age of signs, where everything is a sign. What you wear, how you talk, what you speak, and every sign can be interchanged. And only a more primitive system, which he calls symbolic exchange, which comes from sort of the potlatch, where you give something or you sacrifice something, make a sacrifice to the gods, a violent act, someone is killed, an animal is killed, a person is killed in this violent act, and it has power because it is ambiguous. This ambiguity is what's happening now, and so that's what we have now. And so it's also very interesting that in the middle of the virus we have the spreading of a virus, and so we can't do anything about it. What's happening is that we have the COVID virus, and how interesting it is that, I disagree with Richard Dawkins how much I think his new atheism stuff is dumb, and I'll get into that another time, but it is very interesting that his notion of memes is really coming out as a reality, because the riots are spreading like viruses. They have spread virally across the country. It was in one city, and now it's moved across the country, and that's really interesting. And so what sort of is to be done, I don't know, but I will say that this, if this doesn't happen, if this sort of is calmed down, damped down, I would look out for any other moment of left-wing violence that is ambiguous, that is hard to completely condemn totally, especially for those on the left, because when that happens, the left will then sort of say, well, no, as they are about these riots, people are defending them, saying, look, this is an expression of anger, explaining what I've said, these are, because it's not just about, now it's not just about what the cop has gone, now it is about the poverty, the anger, the alienation, the resentment, the consumerism, the fuck it, it's let it burn. And so that, and if it's not this, another moment like this is very, very likely, because when that happens, then the right acts as a dialectic, and it says, we will come in and defend X, we will do this, and then you have the right versus the left in a full-on battle, and then which way the state switches, who knows, but in history it says probably to the right, and then you have the right and the state versus the left, and then the left, and then it's civil war, it's social breakdown, it's full antagonism, and this is something we've got to watch out for. So I would just say, You know, that's something to look out for. So, you know, I will be doing these videos, hopefully, quite often to try and express my ideas, because basically otherwise I just rant at my friends and family, try and bring some philosophy into what's happening in this situation, because the power of the symbolic act is that it, because of its ambiguity, it disrupts, unlike a sort of a signifying, I've got, you know, like the guys with the guns in the town capital, which, you know, basically are just giant pacifiers. They're the reason they can march up right to the sort of the face of the policeman is not just because they're coppers, it's not just because they're white, but it's because they're actually utterly impotent, and they're totally read as not a threat. And, you know, for all that don't tread on me type stuff, the right that on that level, you know, on the ground, sort of MAGA hat, QAnon, are utterly not a threat to the state. Those young men throwing rocks, smashing windows, burning stuff, you know, because they are so absolutely without a specific target, because they, you know, because what they're doing, and again, Baudrillard talks about this, another thing you do, sort of a potlatch, you get the gift of life from the state, a very controlled, consumerized life is given to you by the state. One of the few ways to sort of really undermine it is to give that back as a gift back, which in a potlatch, they give the gift of life. You say, I don't get here, have it back. And you know what? I'm going to burn my own shit down, not you. And that's why they're like, oh my God, they're burning. That's the whole point. Because they don't want any of it. And that's what makes it so dangerous to the system, because the system relies on you to say, well, I still have to stay alive. And once you say, well, I don't give a fuck if I stay alive, and I don't give a shit if my house is still there, or the shop that I use is still there, because I'm done, and you're caught up in some sort of ecstatic moment, then it undermines the state really badly. So we will see. This is America. You know, it had a symbolic attack in 9/11. It's having a much lower one with these riots, but this is a symbolic violence. It's very powerful, and as we're seeing in its viral nature, and if it doesn't sort of, if it is contained, I would look out for another version coming around the bend, and I would prepare for the worst. Anyway, hopefully, please watch these videos. I'll be doing more. Hit the like button, let me know in the comments if you like it. My name's Rocky. Take care.